Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Wright, human cartoonist extraordinaire, and welcome to another interview for Universal Flaws of Robotics. For anyone not familiar with this project, this is a comics anthology, 19 stories all about automata. We are currently on in our third week on Kickstarter and are pushing towards our total goal of $9,000. Please consider supporting the campaign. It's an incredible project. We're really excited to get it out there. There is a link scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now, and there is also a URL in the description of this video. For today, we have Robert Monsarrat. I'm sorry, actually, I didn't confirm beforehand. How do you pronounce your last name?
Either Montserrat or Montserrat. It's either or for me.
Gotcha. All right. Robert Monsarrat is a local to the Columbus, Ohio comic scene and submitted the story Let Loose the Kraken for this particular anthology. Robert, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
So when you originally submitted this story for consideration, one of the things you asked about was whether or not the robots had to be mechanical, which I find interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I originally read an article about these things called xenobots. They were like biological robots made by some people. I forget the exact particulars, like whether it was a university or what, but it's like a real thing that people have made out of frog cells. And they're actually named xenobots after that species of frog, the xenopus something or other. Forget the scientific term, but basically they used heart cells that made like a pumping motion in order to get them to move and all this other weird stuff. And I just thought biological robots, that would be interesting. Of course, biological robots were originally in the first story that coined the term robot, Rossum's Universal Robots from the 1920s. So I thought, there's something there.
Of course, I actually haven't read that story. The very first robot story involved biological robots.
It did. How did it work? It was this guy on an island. Mm-hmm. This is in the history of the context of the story. He builds like a factory that like makes robots out of this biological material that imitates protoplasm or something. At least that's what they said in the play. And they still assemble them like robots, like cars on a conveyor belt. Like they have people that need intestines together and stuff like that, weird imagery. And the whole story was about like your usual robots rebelling against humanity kind of thing. It was a really good play. It was kind of a satirical thing. The author's name was Karel Čapek. I think that's how you pronounce it. He was from Czechoslovakia. Robot itself is a Czechoslovakian word meaning serf or slave. It was coined by his brother.
When we were talking about names for the anthology, I remember one of the suggestions that came up based on that play was Čapek's Children. Was that you?
That was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not a reference tons of people would be like, but I thought.
Yeah, but that's half the fun of obscure references.
True.
But yeah, it's also interesting that the very first story involving robots had biological robots, which really aren't a thing in the modern version of robot lore. So it's cool that you had the idea to kind of go back to that.
Yeah. It's just fascinating, the origins of things, like robots. The origins of the term robot and just what it originally meant. All right, I have this edition of the play where it has an essay by Čapek at the end, and he's like, this isn't, I didn't mean them to be like mechanical. I meant them to be biological, but I guess so well.
That's how a lot of this stuff ends up happening.
Yeah.
It's always funny seeing how the original creators are like, well, this isn't what I meant for people to do with it, but okay, I guess that's what stuck.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Now, in the final story you made, they did end up being mechanical, but with a real biological lean to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the reason for that was I just couldn't really think how that I couldn't picture how the guy could make them, but still make them in a way where they're like robots, I guess. Maybe
Right.
my mind was just drifting to like Jurassic Park, for example, of genetically engineering them. And I'm like, well, are they robots if they do it genetically engineering? But if they do it through genetically engineering them, so I was like, I'll just go for mechanical, but still have the idea that they're self-replicating machines.
Yeah. And the design definitely has a biological lean to it. Let me bring that up.
Yeah, the Walktopus.
The
I like.
Walktopus.
I like.
Also, great name.
Thank you, thank you. I thought it was very punny.
Now, one other thing that people can kind of see here that I found interesting about this story, uh, the Canon Right anthologies are no stranger to what we've been calling hybrid comics, which are basically combos of comic illustrations and large blocks of prose text. And you are one of two in this particular anthology that decided to go with that. What inspired that particular style?
Um, I guess because I had a lot to say.
Mm,
um, and it's more of a, I guess the way I wrote it was I initially wrote it as like prose, and then I tried to come up with images to go with the prose, as
mm.
opposed to like maybe scripting, where you have like this character says this character says that. And since it's a story about a person who, well, the form the story takes is like somebody's internet post, right? So
Right.
like they're saying, I did this. So this is basically me pretending to be somebody illustrating their internet post.
Kind of makes me think of like how a lot of the Lovecraft stories were framed as this is the log of this person who is now probably dead.
Yeah, that's
And
basically
here's
it.
the crazy thing I saw. I also
Yeah,
need to call out this one image just because we'll definitely be talking a little bit later about generative AI, but I like that you take a specific dig at it.
yeah, thanks. Um, I I do like that creature I came up with. I was like, I need to use that for another story. Not
Yeah, it
just
actually
AI, but that particular
it
being.
yeah, it does kind of have the flavor of generative AI, but also like that you actually made it and it looks awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Uh, and I do like you were able to capture that. I always feel the need to mention this on these streams. This anthology does not use generative AI. That was one of the
Right.
rules when we did all this.
Yeah, that's
And despite the fact that we talk a lot about robots and AI in this, we don't like all the art is handmade.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
But yeah, it's funny because so I kind of got a real satirical vibe off of this as well.
Yeah, that was my goal, was to reference some current stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think the first page or second page mentions QAnon, like the
Yep.
person likely they're a QAnon type imposter, and another time they're person who writes the internet post is like all your COVID style conspiracy theories can be put to rest. And I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of fun. Uh, so robots and things like that are generally outside of your usual work. Like you tend to do a lot of like kaiju based stuff, right?
That's true. I do a lot of kaiju artwork. Um, Mostly these days, I haven't been doing Godzilla solely. I've been drawing my own original creatures, and trying to put them into a zine. Um, that's one of my current projects. It's called OK for Original Kaiju. And It's just all the ideas for kaiju I've come up with over the years bound into one book. Each one gets their own image, and then there are coloring pages in the back.
That's definitely fun.
Yeah, I sold some at Space earlier this.
Yeah.
And
I think this would be a good time for selling kaiju related stuff, just because we've started getting, like, I know people are mixed on the result in the kaiju community, but there are at least popular American Godzilla and Kong movies coming out that are kind of bringing a new audience to kaiju.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on them myself, but the newest ones I've really liked. And then Godzilla -1 also winning that Oscar.
Yeah, that was an excellent movie.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
Can't say enough about that one. And the American ones, I have a good time with. That's usually enough for me.
Yeah.
I need them to bring in Anguirus at some point. Like, let's just do it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Godzilla's best.
How long have you been into kaiju?
Since I was 6 years old. Well, I was always into dinosaurs for as long as I could remember. But my first encounter with Godzilla was inside of a children's book called Sayonara Mrs. Kakelman, about these children who pretend to go to Japan. And on one page they encounter Godzilla, and then I think maybe 2 years later, so I read this book when I was 4, but then when I was 6, my mom was like talking to my sister, my older sister or something, and she said something Godzilla movies. I forget the rest of the conversation. But I came up to my mom and I was like, there are Godzilla movies? I thought it was just a character in a children's book. And she's like, oh, no, yeah, there are tons of them. And so we went to the Columbus Library, and they had like a whole bunch of VHSs of Godzilla there. And the first one I picked out was actually Godzilla 1985, which was an excellent film. And I've been hooked ever since.
My exposure to Godzilla came from back during the summers. There would be channels that would do movie marathons of them. Like, and for a long time, my only exposures were the old Godzillas with the terrible dubs and things like that.
Yeah, it's hard to find those anymore. Like, Criterion recently did some Godzilla movie releases, and they don't even have the dubs on them. Just they're all subtitled.
Kind of unfortunate. Like, there's a certain charm to them.
Yeah, I have a nephew now, and I'm like, oh, I don't have the dubs. I should have kept them so I could show them to him. And because
it wasn't until college that I had a friend who was really into Godzilla, and he was like, they kept making those movies, and a lot of them are good. Like, they're not just corny, they're not just like some of the really old cheesy ones with weird dubs. He's like, here, watch it in Japanese. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah, even the old ones in Japanese are still really good.
Yeah.
It's just the way they dubbed them back in the 60s maybe made them sound a little sillier. But when you watch them in like high definition with like the original Japanese, they're like, oh, chef's kiss.
Yeah. I would absolutely check out any of them at this point.
Yeah.
I know for a while, the one I kind of looked at as the gold standard after I got into the more modern ones was Final Wars.
Oh, Final Wars. I saw that on the big screen at G-Fest this year because it's been 20
years. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, the entire reason I love it is that one American actor dude with the sword who's
Don Fry. Yeah.
Yeah. He's great.
He's actually been to G-Fest a couple times, and everyone's always like, say the line, and he's like, this is Operation Final War, and then the whole room erupts.
No, it's amazing watching this stuff in Japanese whenever they have American actors in it. Or let me rephrase that. Whenever they have English-speaking actors in it. Because a lot of them, they just grab whoever speaks English, and it's like, I'm Australian. Pretend to be American, fine. No one can tell.
Yeah, that's kind of like what happened in Final Wars. They had a scene set in New York, but it was filmed in Australia, and they used Australian actors. The part where the cop is going up against that other guy, like who's like a pimp or a drug dealer or something, and they're like, you know, they got guns pointed at each other, and then Rodan just swoops in. It's just
It's
funny to
all
watch
excellent.
because like you can tell that they're swearing, like their mouths are moving like they're swearing, but then they obviously dubbed over it because it's supposed to be a PG movie. So just really weird watching.
Yeah. But it is interesting because it does feel like it is a genre that, because of that dub, for a long time didn't get respect over here.
Oh yeah.
And like the fact that it is winning Oscars now is amazing.
It's very amazing. It's vindicating too, because I always knew it had potential.
Yeah. Also, in case anyone has not seen it, watch Godzilla -1.
Yes, it's on Netflix.
Even if you're not that into this stuff, it's a good movie. We're checking out.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. You know, it's a good human story as well as a good monster story.
And as the best Godzilla stories are, it's good commentary on post-nuclear war Japan.
Yeah, that, and also commenting on, you know, the past with like World War II and stuff like that, and how you know, war is bad.
Yeah, a common theme.
Very common theme, yeah.
But yeah, I remember being fascinated in that by the fact that they really go into how destroyed Japan was immediately after World War II in a way I actually don't think I'd seen before.
Yeah, me neither, I wouldn't say.
Like just going through towns and just large chunks of it are just craters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very, very shocking.
Yeah. And there's also a strong message in it about fighting for life and not sacrificing and things like that, which is very contrary to the perception of Japan in World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah, they mention that. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's
anyway,
a message I can get behind.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Anyway, kind of circling back to Let Loose the Kraken. You can definitely see kaiju influence in a lot of the creature designs, and also in the name, like
Clash of the Titans. Yeah, Let Loose the Kraken.
Did you actually intend to make these things significantly larger originally, and then it just changed, or did you always kind of picture them as little octopus guys?
I always pictured them as little octopus guys. Who knows? Maybe they grow over time.
Yeah, that feels like where the story could be going.
Yeah. Maybe do it for the sequel.
Especially with that, fake generative AI one.
Yeah.
See that one destroying Tokyo.
Totally. That would be awesome.
I think the main thing that's fun is I'm picturing the rubber suit that would have.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Just to get there, because there's one image that I think also sums up a lot of the feeling of this. It's that fantastic do what I'm telling you to do. Thank you. The whole Michelangelo thing, but with squid robots.
Yeah. Yeah, that took me a while to do, just like looking at the picture of God creating Adam and just trying to get it as meticulously as I can, like with all the folds and the robes and stuff like that. It may not take a while, but it took a while.
Hey, you can tell this part definitely took some work. And it's fun to just see the two different styles. Like you have the classic image of God. Then you got this like cute little like squid dude holding out a claw hand.
Yeah.
It honestly fits very well with how the whole thing came together.
Great. I'm glad.
So going back to what we were talking about a little bit, one thing I'm asking people in all these interviews, because it's an important topic in the art community right now, are your thoughts on what's happening with generative AI and that whole conversation?
Oh, obviously I'm not a fan. Um, it's one thing to, let's see, how do I say this? It's one thing to make the technology, but it's another thing to not compensate the artists that you're taking from and taking data from and feeding that data into the program, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it just goes into this whole thing about, it'd be nice one day if there was something like universal basic income for everybody, so we didn't have to worry about, stealing our bread.
No, I know exactly what you mean. So do you think that we're in genuine trouble from these things, or do you think they're a passing fad?
Well, I think I heard somewhere that they're running out of data to train these things on, so who knows? Maybe it could be a passing fad. I would hope. I'd like it to be a passing fad so we could just get back to drawing.
I do know one of the things that they were saying was a problem with AI is because AIs generate bad data as well. Like it's part of what they've been doing. They've started feeding each other bad data, and so now it's getting worse and worse because they're actually there's a degree to which they're being educated with their own false information.
Kind of like an Ouroboros.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great analogy for it.
Yeah. And they use up a lot of natural resources too, like a lot of electricity and I think a lot of water as well to like power the machines. I forget exactly how it works, but I heard something about water being used to like help cool or something. Yeah. And
it's funny. I've only just in these interviews started hearing about people talk about the environmental impact. It's interesting because I heard it compared to the environmental impact of the blockchain related stuff, which I was a little surprised just because I didn't think AI took up that much processing power.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known unless I'd heard about it too.
Yeah. But it's definitely something that is concerning, especially if it gets anywhere near where blockchain had gotten. Like I know with some cryptocurrency, there was crypto farms that were expending more power annually than the country of Argentina. Like insane stuff was happening with it.
For what's basically a glorified JPEG.
Pretty much. But yeah, it's interesting that AI also seems to be falling down that hole a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're currently, besides this project, you're working, you mentioned the zine. Okay. What other projects have you been working on?
Well, I do have another comic that's coming out in the C3, the Columbus Cartoon Coalition anthology called C is For. Mine is called C is For Creatures, and it's about my character that I've been coming up with for a long time called Raraku, and it's like basically Raraku trash talking other monsters. Just a 2-page kind of a gag comic. It's pretty good.
Yeah. You mentioned C3, and I did, in case anyone's interested, this is also another anthology worth checking out. C stands for. But I'm curious, when did you join Columbus Cartoon Coalition? Because we're both members.
Yeah. What year was it? Was it 2022? Maybe sometime in the winter of, I think, 2022. There was a convention called GalaxyCon that I was tabling at, and somebody that I met there was like, well, I joined the Discord for Columbus Cartoon Coalition, but I hadn't really interacted too much with it. But then I met somebody at GalaxyCon that I'd known before, a guy named Lewis, who we used to go to G-Fest a lot. And he was like, I guess basically he recommended me to the people at the Cartoon Coalition table because they were like, yeah, this guy came over and mentioned you. And I was like, oh, well, thanks. So Then I started getting more active with them, obviously.
Yeah, you've been a pretty active member. Have you been in every anthology so far?
Not every anthology. I was in the anthology they did last year, the 2023 one. I had 2 entries in there. And then this anthology.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely been active. I know I've seen you at some of the meetups and things like that. You show up.
Yeah, I'm planning to go to the next one too. I got some comics to trade.
Right. The next one's going to be a comic trade. I'm going to have to bring some good stuff.
Yeah.
I actually got sent a bunch of stuff by the printer we're planning on using. They actually sent books that they'd printed so we'd get samples instead of just sending the sample paper packs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, especially since we're hoping to have them make these books as soon as we get funded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, just to get one more halfway plug in there, we are doing this interview as part of the Kickstarter for Universal Flaws of Robotics, a comics anthology all about automata. Robert gave us the story Let Loose the Kraken. It is one of 19 stories that range from horror to humor to romance to transhumanist terror. It's great. If you want to support that, the link is in the description and is scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. Kickstarter is only running a little over 2 weeks, 2 more weeks at this point. So now is the time to jump on and get you some comics.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like the main thing I just want to talk to you about is kaiju, because that's half the fun.
Okay. Yeah.
So it sounds like Godzilla is where you started. Is that the main kaiju you've remained interested in? Do you have other favorites?
Kong is also a big favorite. I probably have known Kong longer than I've known Godzilla. No, I sound like I talk like they're my friends, but
no, I get it.
Well, I used to be terrified of King Kong because, it looked like he could pick you up and eat you or something like that. I must have been really, really small, like maybe 3 or 4. For some reason, my older sister, again, she got the video from the library and we were watching it for whatever reason. And I just remember being terrified. I think I even had a dream that I was in the attic of my old house and Kong was looking through the window for me. And like he was roaring, but no sound came out of his mouth. It was really creepy.
That is pretty creepy. I'm curious, do you remember which Kong it was? Was it the original? Was it the 1970s? The original.
Yeah.
Lucky. I actually still haven't seen the original yet.
Oh, it's the best. Still really well done. Holds up today.
Yeah. I know I need to see it because I'm a practical effects nerd, and there was so much that got introduced by King Kong.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize why that movie was important when it came out. It was, I want to say, like very early, 1930s maybe?
Yeah, 1933.
1933.
It just turned 90 last year. And then in 2029, the original movie becomes public domain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we'll have a Mickey Mouse situation on our hands.
But yeah, like when that movie came out, first off, 1933 is like talkies were new. Like it was so early in the history of film. And it was one of the first movies to do a lot of the practical effects stuff that went on to become incredibly important. Like it's rough. Exactly. It was one of the very first movies that really did all that, at least feature films. There's stuff like A Trip to the Moon and stuff like that did a lot of crazy things.
Yeah. Oh man, Trip to the Moon is a real trip.
Yeah. That's another one I recommend for people. You have to be used to silent films, but it's incredible for its time.
Yeah. It's only 18 minutes long too, so you don't have to spend a whole time watching it and you can find it anywhere. Yeah.
One other short that I'll throw out there for people who are like nerds about this kind of stuff. There's a really, really old silent version of the story of Frankenstein that has one of the coolest visual effects I've ever seen.
I know what you're talking about. The one made by Thomas Edison's studio.
Yeah. Like it was from 1911 or something like that. It's been for years it was lost, and they managed to like cobble together pieces of it thanks to the internet, and were able to put it together.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think I've seen it. It's on YouTube, I think. It's also a special feature on the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein Blu-ray.
The
one from '94.
Yeah, like it
monster.
I'm just glad that it's managed to survive, because that's one of the problems with a lot of older film, especially back in the day when it was just kept on film reels. You'd have so much stuff gets lost just by the nature of it, and it's nice that some of it is actually getting digitized and saved and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy what we've lost. There's also like 2 Japanese King Kong movies that were lost in World War II, for example.
Oh wow, they were made. They were made before World War II. That's fascinating.
Like, there was one that actually was made in 1933. It was called, I forget the exact title, but it was actually about a guy who was a street performer playing at being King Kong on like a stage show. And so he would dress up in a suit, and there'd be like a miniature Empire State Building that he'd pretend to climb.
That is fantastic.
And it was like a romantic movie somehow. Like he was trying to impress a girl. I forget exactly what the entire plot entailed. And then there was another one that wasn't really about a giant gorilla, but it was still called King Kong Appears in Edo, which was the old name for Tokyo. So it was like a samurai movie, but with a guy in a gorilla suit.
This sounds amazing.
Yeah. Posters for it you can still find online, but the movie is just kaput.
Like, that's really unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
I know one of the big moments in comics in Japan was right around the time of World War II and immediately post World War II, when American movies started arriving, and they've been basically completely cut off from them for a very long time. And it wasn't until immediately post-war that all this stuff started coming over. It's where Tezuka got inspired. And I always forget his name. The guy who did Gekige no Kitaro talked about that too.
Shigeru Mizuki.
Mizuki, thank you. I always forget his name. I don't know why. But like all these guys post-war suddenly got exposed to all this media, and we're like, oh, cool, we should draw this stuff too.
Mm-hmm. And look where we are now. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Going back to kaiju in particular, and since we're talking about old film and you mentioned stop motion, I got to bring up one of the guys who did giant monsters better than anybody in stop motion, Ray Harryhausen. I'm assuming you're a fan.
Oh, of course. The man, the myth.
Have you seen, I always get the name wrong, but it's like 8 million miles from Earth.
20 million miles to Earth.
20 million miles to Earth. Thank you.
Yeah, I have that on Blu-ray.
That's got it. How does it work with stuff that actually upsamples it? I don't think I've ever seen a Blu-ray version, but I'd be worried that it would actually make the thing look weird.
I wouldn't say it looks weird. It just looks normal. Like, there's the version I have, there's a version where it's colorized and a version where it's black and white, and you can choose between them. I always watch the black and white version.
Yeah, colorizing that seems wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Harryhausen, when he was alive, he approved of them doing that, but I still just think it looks better in black and white.
Yeah. I remember watching it and just being amazed at how the creature moved. Like,
yeah,
he always got that, how to make a monster feel like it was a creature and not just.
Yeah. He would always try to do like reptilian legs or goat legs in the case of the Cyclops. He always said that way you wouldn't confuse it for a man in a suit.
Yeah.
He wanted to, I guess, really wow the audience.
I don't know how anyone would confuse those for people in suits. Maybe Medusa. Medusa, they did in Clash of the Titans, could have been a person in a suit theoretically, but
yeah, it was so detailed. Trying to think, but yeah, 20 million miles to Earth. That was just a gorgeous movie, you know. The creature in that is actually named Ymir, after the giant from Norse mythology whose body was used to create the world.
Well, considering how big it got, that seems fitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was always, it is one of the things that is kind of funny. Harryhausen in particular feels like the holdover for kaiju stuff after King Kong. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there weren't that many giant monster stories in the U.S. Between probably any of the stuff related to King Kong and Pacific Rim. Like between there was almost nothing.
Yeah, it was a desert. I'm still amazed, like, that it's been since 2013 we've just gotten so many of those movies.
Yeah, because they got proof that they could work.
Yeah, I always say we fans are eating good.
It is definitely a good time to be into kaiju. It's nice that Toho went back to doing, because I know Final Wars was supposed to be the last Godzilla movie.
It was. They even closed down the pool that they used for water scenes.
I feel like they said a few times that they were done with Godzilla movies, though, and they always managed to come back.
Yeah, although I think the only other time it lasted this long between movies was between 1975 and 1984. That was like about a space of 9 years, and from 2004 to 2014, that was like 10 years. So, yeah, 2004 to 2014, those were the hard times.
Yeah, and it was interesting when the Toho movies started coming back, just because they did come back a little bit weird. Like, I enjoy them, but like Shin Godzilla, for example, did some very strange stuff with Godzilla. It was awesome, but
I loved it.
Yeah. Like, I was definitely confused when they showed the original, like the first version of Godzilla that showed up on the shore with the big old bug eyes.
Yeah, that actually,
what's happening?
That actually scared me when I first saw it. I'm like, what am I looking at here? But
it was probably one of those moments. But yeah, it's one of those things where as the movie goes on and it like things start to change, it's really fascinating. But
yeah, man, I saw that when I actually went on a Godzilla related tour the year it came out to Japan to go see that movie in the theater. So I think I was one of the first Americans to actually like see it. Kind of funny, like I was at the Hotel Gracery in Shinjuku, which is the hotel with the giant Godzilla head on top. And in the movie theater below, it was a Toho cinema where they were actually premiering the movie. So they had like a red carpet out and that I could see from my hotel room. And me and some friends actually went down to just not be in the crowd, but walk by it. And we saw Hideaki Anno, the director, walking by. And we were like, Anno-san, Anno-san. And the police were like, okay, move along, you guys.
Yeah, got to keep the Gaikokujin moving. Like,
yeah.
I remember the other thing from that movie that cracked me up was the lady who was supposed to be the representative from America.
Kayako Ann Patterson, yeah.
Yeah, like, did you? I hope you didn't get in trouble in the theater watching that, and because I would have had such a hard time not laughing every time she spoke English.
Yeah, yeah. It was funny, but I just kind of, it was interesting when we saw the movie. It had no subtitles at all. So we were pretty in the dark as to what the plot was. We just were like, why is Godzilla like that? And why is his spines turning purple now? Why are his spines turning purple now? And the way the beam happened with like his jaw opening up, we weren't expecting that.
It was pretty cool though.
It was amazing. It was a really surreal experience to like not know what people were saying and what was going on and just kind of seeing all this weird stuff happen.
Yeah. Just weird tangent, but just you made me think of it. I've been to Japan once and we did go to see a movie. It was an American movie, so it was in English with Japanese subtitles at the bottom, but randomly it was the Prince of Persia movie.
Oh, man, there's a blast from the past.
Yeah, so the best thing I could say about that movie is I got to see it in Japan, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I haven't seen it myself, but I remember trailers for it.
Yeah, it was cromulent. It was perfectly fine, but
Yeah.
completely forgettable as well.
Mm-hmm.
We are getting to about the 40-minute mark. If anyone in chat has questions for us, now would be the time. We will see them and be able to bring them up.
Okay.
And other than that, I think we're going to keep nerding out about Godzilla.
No problem. I
Yeah.
can do that till the cows come home.
Yeah. I say that, but I have a different kaiju in mind. I'm curious if you're a Gamera fan as well.
Oh, of course I am. Man. Gamera I also discovered in the Columbus Library VHS stacks, the G section. And yeah, some way there was another anthology that I contributed to called Gamera the Great. It was like maybe a year or two ago, before that Gamera anime series on Netflix came out.
I actually did not know they did a Gamera animated series.
They have done a Gamera anime series. It's a couple episodes long. He fights 5 different kaiju from the Gamera movies. It's actually from the people who did those CGI Godzilla anime movies.
I was about to say, like, I know Netflix had done a few things like that.
Yeah, but I still haven't watched the series myself, but it was before that came out, so there had been no Gamera related properties at the time. So
Yeah.
Since 2006 when Gamera the Brave came out. So this one person on Twitter, her name is Kaiju Hime. She was putting together this anthology called Gamera the Great and looking for artists. So I contributed a piece called Gamera Festito Calon, where it's about those old sailors' myths about giant islands that turn out to be turtle shells, that trope.
Yeah.
But I made it Gamera. So, and I used the text of an original translation of one of those myths for it. And I think it's some of my best work art-wise. I don't think it's still available to purchase, but I've probably posted it on my socials at some point.
That's a great idea too. Like that fits right in with Gamera anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I love Gamera. Especially the trilogy of movies in the 90s. Guardian of the Universe.
I think those are the ones that I've seen. I actually have not seen nearly as much Gamera, but
yeah, those are considered like the cream of the crop in terms of kaiju films.
I remember when I was introduced to Gamera's stuff, the main thing that shocked me was the special effects, just because it was a situation where, like, I was getting exposed to these in the mid 2000s, and I'd seen American blockbuster special effects that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to get out there, even back then. And the Japanese were making these movies for a fraction of the price.
Right.
And you can kind of tell that it's lower quality special effects, but the story's told so well that it works perfectly for what they're doing. And that influenced a lot about how I do storytelling.
Yeah, the third one especially almost, I would say, kind of competes with American quality movies in terms of like the creativity that they use to realize everything, like Gamera and also the CGI for Iris's foe in that movie. And yeah, like, I mean, it's 2000s level special effects or 90s level special effects, but I think it still holds up for the most part because most of it was practical, and I just think it looks really good.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the secret with a lot of this stuff. Special effects technology is going to change over time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you use it well, and if you're smart about how you use it, then the story will hold up everything anyway.
Yeah, and the people that did the special effects for that, some of them are still working today, like Shinji Higuchi. He actually got his start. One of the things he first did was in the 1984 Godzilla movie. He helped the guy in and out of the suit. but later on he went to do the effects for those Gamera movies, and he also did the effects for those live-action Attack on Titan films.
I've seen those.
Yeah. Your mileage may vary on the story of those movies, the story quality in the movies, but I say the effects hold up.
Yeah, those movies are wild.
Yeah.
That was my first exposure to Attack on Titan, was seeing the first of those movies at a screening at the Center for Cartoon Studies.
Oh.
And
yeah.
we actually got to see the second one before it got a proper English release.
Oh, nice.
It was taken from, I want to say it was a version of it that had an English dub or an English captioning from the Polynesian translation of it. It made no sense what was going on, because like it was the Japanese language over it. It wasn't a dub. I said that wrong. But the subtitles were very clearly translated to English by someone for whom English is not their first language. And there are parts that are like, we had no idea what was going on because the text made no sense. And it was kind of okay, because those movies are very strange and much more horrifying than Attack on Titan. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think they are too. Yeah.
Like they are much gorier, which is wild.
Gorier, yeah. And then after Attack on Titan, Higuchi went on to do Shin Godzilla with Hideaki Anno.
Nice.
And then I think Anno wrote and Higuchi directed Shin Ultraman, which is the spiritual successor to Shin Godzilla, followed by Shin Kamen Rider.
Has Shin Ultraman been brought over to the US?
They made a very low quality DVD in the US, but there is a Canadian release that is region free, made by Raven Banner Releasing, that is much better. I recommend getting that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely check it out. I know of Ultraman more than anything.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
I've only seen like the first series of Ultraman all the way through from the 60s, but I do have a couple of sets that Mill Creek Entertainment has been putting out, and it's amazing how much it's like evolved.
Yeah.
They still do the old miniature cities and men in suit effects, and it just is the camera angles though that they use nowadays make it seem way more dynamic.
Yeah. It's funny because like my main exposure to Ultraman, I'd seen a little bit of the old stuff, not very much. My main exposure was the series that they made on Netflix, which I had fun with, but like my friends who are into this stuff are like, no.
Yeah, it wasn't the one based on the manga, right?
I don't even know if it was based on the manga, but Ultraman's pretty small in most of it.
Yeah, there was a manga made not too long ago by these guys, and I think they said they couldn't make Ultraman large for whatever reason. And I'm like, why? That's like the point. But there is another Netflix animated Ultraman movie that just came out called Ultraman Rising that is actually very good and heartfelt and more true to the original show at the same time. I recommend that one. It's where Ultraman looks after a baby kaiju.
I'll have to check that out. But yeah, not having Ultraman get big seems like making Godzilla and not having him breathe fire, Roland Emmerich.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. That movie. We don't talk about that movie.
It's true. It's always funny to me that we finally got American Godzilla movies at least reasonably right. And to a degree, the old one people just have completely forgotten about. And like, I'll never forget. I saw it in theaters.
It still has its fans. It has its fans.
Yeah.
I mean, unlike the internet, though. But it's definitely not the cultural juggernaut that the actual Godzilla is.
Yeah. All right. I think we've pretty much driven this particular topic into the ground. So for anyone who is joining us right at the end, we are doing this as part of the Kickstarter for Universal Flaws of Robotics. a comics anthology all about automata. Robert here gave us the story Let Loose the Kraken, which is all about squid-like robots and the conspiracy theory behind how they were released into the world. Highly recommend checking that out, as well as the other 18 stories in the anthology, all of which are fantastic. You can support that at the link in the description or that is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Robert, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Monsarrat Robert, and you can also find me on Blue Sky at Robert Monsarrat, and also Instagram at Robert_Monsarrat.
Yeah, it's always tricky when you can't get the exact same handle for everything.
Yeah, it is.
It is what it is. But you can find my work at bwhcomics.com. I'm also at bwhcomics on Patreon, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. You can also find my webcomic Cospain, webcomic about cosplay convention craziness, over at cospaigncomic.com. So that is going to wrap it up for us tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Robert, thank you for coming out.
No problem.
Yep. You've done a couple live streams at this point. Do you have a sign-off or anything that you do, or you just... I always like to check before I cut it.
Well, I don't know. Just thanks for having me on, and hope everybody enjoys what I wrote and supports the anthology and everything.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and until next time, rock on, guys, and